1. When Boris laid down his sword at the end of the day, it felt so much heavier than when he'd buckled it on this morning. Was it the weight of the lives he'd taken, or the blood the blade had drunk during battle?
"I brought water for you to wash, Your Highness,"
Igor said, sloshing the contents of his bucket into the bowl before the squire dropped the bucket on the floor.
"Do you want me to help you out of your armour too?"
Boris was perfectly capable of taking his own clothes off, and any other day he'd have said so. But they'd been fighting since dawn, and there wasn't a bit of his body that wasn't complaining of weariness.
"Please,"
he said instead, lifting his aching arms to give the boy better access to the buckles on his breastplate. His previous squire wouldn't have asked. He'd have simply made himself useful. But Kiralu had earned his knighthood a year ago now, and he now served Boris, his brother, Yorick, in the north. Igor still had some growing to do, as well as a lot of learning, before he'd be as good as Kiralu.
"It'll need a good clean and polish before the morrow, before we march for home in the morning,"
Boris added. Igor's thin shoulders lifted in a massive sigh.
"Yes, Your Highness."
He'd learned not to complain, but his sulky expression said he wanted to. Boris hid his smile. He hadn't liked cleaning armor at Igor's age either, but he'd known blood could eat at steel like rust, weakening what needed to be strong. Armor had saved his life more than once, and Boris appreciated the value of well-maintained gear.
"Tell the cook I'm ready for supper, too,"
Boris said.
"After that, I won't need you until breakfast."
Igor nodded and dashed away. Boris barely had time to finish washing and don fresh clothes before his knights began to arrive to deliver their reports of the day's battle.
"I lost 6 of my men today in an ambush, but we found the Piseni camp, which wouldn't have had much of value in it. The food they've stolen from the villagers south of here was likely long gone. All are dead or buried, Your Highness. Far fewer than the enemy did. My men are still working on the pit to bury all of them."
Boris wasn't sure the Piseni would appreciate the good Christian burial his men gave them, but as they were dead, they weren't likely to complain about it.
"We're down 2 horses, but only minor wounds among the men."
2 war horses would be costly to replace, but the knights who'd lost them could surely afford it. As they'd all head home on the morrow, it wasn't likely they'd need new war horses until next year's campaign.
"My scout report no more Piseni within a day's ride."
No Piseni they could see anyway. The mountain dwellers could be hiding under a rock just outside camp, and they'd never know until someone decided to use the rock as a latrine.
"Your supper, Your Highness."
Igor was getting better at not spilling the stew. The pot was still more than half full.
2 of the Piseni got away, vanished into the mountains.
If only they'd stay in the mountains, instead of coming to raid their villages. Then Boris and his men could stay at home, polishing benches with their ever-broadening butt cheeks, as they feasted on this victory until the next enemy dared to invade their borders. Boris suppressed a smile. He and his men were not made for polishing benches, or growing fat from feasting, much like his father, who would have ridden out with them had his health not prevented it.
"Where to next, Your Highness?"
Boris raised his head to find all his men watching him with an air of expectation. Good men, loyal men, who had earned a victory feast 12 times over during this grueling campaign.
"On the morrow, we pack up and head for the capital. God willing, we'll be feasting in Prislov before we know it."
A ragged cheer rose up, followed by a chorus of thanks.